Hey everybody, it's Eugene Liscio here, and welcome to Click3D, another episode for you. And today what we're going to be doing is another series of model reviews. And so very recently I finished another photogrammetry class and had some students submit assignments, and I've got these assignments, and what I'd like to do is show them to you and give some feedback and look at the good, the bad, the ugly, what kinds of things could have been improved, maybe some things that were not in their control anyway. So I think giving this type of feedback is often really great. Now, what kind of criteria am I going to be using to critique these particular models? Well, let me show you. Let me switch over here. And these are the things that I'll be looking at. So one of them is going to be the subject difficulty. And what I'm interested in there is how difficult was it to, photograph this particular object or environment? Is it something that's very kind of flat and simple geometry, or do we have something with a lot of complex features, a lot of blind spots where you have to kind of get in and take a lot of different photographs from different angles? So the subject difficulty is something that you'll have to look at and sort of consider whenever you're doing any type of model. The second thing is the photographs themselves, and there's a number of different things when it comes to photographs. One is, for example, the quantity of photographs, and this is a difficult one to judge because sometimes you have too few photographs, sometimes there are too many photographs. So it's really about finding the balance of photographs and making sure that they're done in a good way, let's put it that way, or in organized fashion, but I'll cover that later. The second thing is the coverage, and so you can have a lot of photographs, but if you don't have the camera placed in the right positions, then you may lose detail in some areas that you may have wanted some greater features or greater details to be shown. So where you take the photos and where you place the camera is going to be important. C is the crispness of the photos, and really what we're looking for here are photos that were taken that are very crisp, very clear. There's no blurring. Did the person use a tripod? Were they holding it by hand? Were the camera settings reasonable? Could they have been improved? Well, those are things that we will look at. Lighting is another one. And so the object, if it's outdoors and it's a really sunny day and there's some harsh shadows being cast, then some things are in your control and some things are not in your control. So was there any preparation or any thought given to the lighting situation? If it was indoors and you have full control of the environment, was anything done there? Did we need a flash? Did we just need external lighting? Did we need to make the light more diffuse, or was the ambient lighting just good enough? So we'll consider that as well. Organization. So it's okay to have a lot of photos, and a lot of people go overkill sometimes, which will still work, but sometimes it's just not practical to have 1,000 photos or 500 photos. So all that needs to be considered, and the organization of these photos. If you have a well organized set of photographs, then sometimes you don't need to go overkill. You'll have enough redundancy there, and you're sort of optimizing the number of photographs with the positions. Things like, have you used a turntable? Have you covered everything from the top and the bottom of the object? Were you looking at trying to actually close the bottom of the object or this particular model? Maybe it's not necessary, but in some cases you want to have a full 3D model from all sides. So we're going to look at that too. 3 and 4 are really the mesh quality and the texture quality. 1 is just the geometry of the mesh. How well did it reconstruct? There are some things you can do there to tweak that, depending on the settings that you choose. And the same goes with the texture quality. And the texture quality will be impacted by the photographs and the lighting. And so it kind of has to all come together. And finally, just an overall score out of 10. And, some of that is going to be a little bit subjective. Like, for example, even just the choice of the subject. Is it something that's interesting, and was it rebuilt really well? And so we'll give it a final score. So let's get going here. I'm going to bring up the first model and I'll start running through this list. Okay, so this is my first model here, and you'll see this one is called Surfed Too Long, and look kind of cool looking little thing. So I'm just gonna kind of rotate around so you can all get a nice view of what this looks like here. So let's go through our list and talk about the subject difficulty. And actually this one has a little bit of complication to it because of where the head and the monitor come together. So you have to kind of get in between this little area. There's also some, texture and geometry inside here, under the arms, that sort of thing. So, not crazy difficult, but, trying to get all this stuff to be clean on the mesh and in the point cloud is a bit of work. So, it's reasonably difficult. Not crazy difficult, but reasonably difficult. So a little bit of a challenge if you wanted to clean up all of these particular areas. Now, in terms of the photographs, what I'm going to do is, let me increase the, I may have to do this in a couple places, but I'm going to increase the camera sizes here so that they are scaled a little bit bigger and they're easier to see. So let me do that. Yeah, that may help a bit. So in terms of like the quantity, there's a reasonable amount of photographs, okay, but you'll look right away at the coverage and you'll see that there's some issues here, right? We've got some gaps here where there should be more fill, like right in this area here, there could have been a few more photos taken. And that's part of the reason why we're getting some of this mess here. We're getting this mesh connection and stuff like that. There isn't enough to break it apart, so it's merging parts of the mesh together. So you'll also notice that the majority of the photographs were taken up top, and if you want to clean up some of the stuff that's underneath here, well, you just have to get down low. So that would have been helpful as well. Okay, that could have really helped things a little bit. Now, the photos themselves are actually pretty good. I'm just looking at the thumbnails here. Not too bad at all, but I would have actually gotten closer. So when you have a photo like this down here and the subject is only taking, 30-40% of the field of view or of the frame, get in closer, right? There's no reason to waste all that space around you unless it was important. So in this particular case, it would have been better to have gotten a little bit closer, but still, like the shots are fairly crisp and clean, and they look pretty good. So the photography part is reasonable. Also, if you look at the lighting, this is indoors, but you can see this is a very well lit area. Just down in this area, a little bit of darkness here, but it's not a harsh shadow. It's absolutely reasonable, for a photogrammetry project. So I kind of like this. That part there, the lighting and such was really well done. So it was a well chosen location. Now, in terms of the organization here, the photos probably could have been better organized. And the reason I say that is you'll see that we've got these clusters of photos in certain spots, which is great. But there's no reason to have, 4 or 5 images that are all tied close together and then have a gap over here on this side. So I don't know if there was some kind of a issue with this is on a table, so maybe there was a part of the table where the person couldn't get close to, but had this been on a small turntable or something like that, then these areas here could have been filled in. So organization, not bad. Better to fill in a little bit, a few more camera positions below, and in some of these areas where it's we get these blind sections or empty sections with photographs. Now on the mesh itself, let's have a look to see what the mesh looks like. So in some places it looks pretty good. I mean, look at the details. We're getting some very small details here. That's not too bad. So it's looking, pretty good in some areas, but of course the areas where things were not photographed properly or up close, then we start to get a little bit of a mess. Okay, so this could have been improved somewhat by taking more photographs. Maybe there were some things that could have been done with the settings to help improve some of this too, or in editing as well. So you can help clean up some of the mesh by cleaning any noise from the point cloud and those types of things. Now the texture quality, let me go back here. Again, because the photos were taken in such a well-lit environment and such, the texture looks quite good. And you can see that as soon as you apply the texture to this particular model, well, you get a good looking model. It actually looks quite good. But if you were to just 3D print this without the texture, then it would leave some things to be desired. So as a final model, overall on a scale of 1 to 10, I kind of like the model, but it's hard to not notice some of these areas. So I would give it something like a 7, maybe 6.5, 7 out of 10. Could have been much. This could have easily been a 9 because of just the really nice lighting and that sort of thing that is here. So it was a good model. It was a good challenge. Few little things to improve, and this could have been like I said, well improved and a really great model overall. So that's that. I'll give it a 7, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, so here is our second model, and this one here is a type of sculpture, and it's got a lot of designs on it and such like that. So let's talk about, or let's go through our list of criteria and just get right to it. So the first thing is the subject difficulty. This is sort of a relatively simple shape, and it doesn't have too many undercuts and stuff like that. Some, the eye sockets are not all that deep. Even where the nasal opening or aperture is, it's not too bad. Inside of here, where the jaw is, maybe some of these areas are going to be a little difficult to get. But, for the most part, if you move the camera in the proper position, you're going to get pretty good coverage of most of this. So it's a nice model to do, but it's not overly difficult. So it's about, I'll say, medium to medium light in terms of the subject difficulty. Now, in terms of the photographs, let's zoom out here so you can see the quantity of photographs. You'll see that there's quite a few photographs here around, and then there's some different ones. So there's a couple of rings that were almost at the same. So there's definitely enough photographs. Let's put it that way. It's not lacking in photographs. There's a couple of different rings here, and this tells me that it was done either on a turntable or a simulated turntable, something that can rotate around, or they just rotated the object around on the side of the head, on the other side of the head, top, bottom, and to get all the different angles and such that they needed. So quantity is good. There's no doubt it's not lacking any, but let's talk about the coverage. Well, we've got a lot of photos up on the top. So we got a ring on the top, we've got 2 rings here, and then we've got like half a ring over here on the back. And I'm not sure why that wasn't continued around the front, because there was a lot of stuff here, like where the eye sockets, and there's certainly a lot of detail on the front that could have benefited from some additional photos. But I probably would have taken the second ring. You can see there's 2 rings that are done here. Here and here, and I'm not sure why there wasn't a completed ring over here, and maybe one even slightly underneath. And it could be just it was hard to get the model to sort of sit properly upside down, but there's always a way around that. There's always something that you could do there. But in terms of quality, in terms of coverage, I think there's enough there. But in terms of organization, it could have been a little bit better organized just on these parts here, just to help complete some of these rings and move one of these rings here further down so you get it from a different angle. Now, when we talk about the photos themselves and the lighting and such, this looks really good. I mean, this is very well lit, so the person took some care here. And I mean, I like what I'm seeing here, that there are not a lot of harsh shadows that on this particular model. So this is going to reconstruct really well. It's going to give you a nice texture. And so let's have a look at the mesh that we get from this individual here, and let's turn this on and go like that. All right, so here you can see and if you move into these photos, there may be some roughness in between here, but you see down here there's actually some roughness on the jaw. So sometimes there are things on the model, like you can see here. So there is some roughness here. It's not an artifact or something else. Up here a little bit smoother, but there's some pretty good detail in this particular model, and so overall it's quite nice, right? Some really good features up here. There might have been a few little things that could have been improved, but overall I'm liking this. I think it's pretty cool. And of course, let's get the colors back on and let's talk about the textures. So it's just a nice even texture when you start going through the model. So this was really well done. I like what I'm seeing here. This is something that, you know, could easily be brought into another program without a lot of heavy work to fix textures and such like that. So I'm quite happy with this. I like the mesh. I like the texture. And I think overall, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I would give this one about a 7.5. It was pretty well done, and it is quite a good model. You know, I always talk about my 3D print test, or you know, I take that in consideration. If I were to take this, just the mesh from this model, and print it, would I have a decent print in my hands? And I would say, yeah, I probably would have a pretty decent 3D model of this thing as a 3D print, which means the mesh was reconstructed pretty well. So 7.5 on this guy, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this one here, I'm not gonna lie, I just love the model, and I don't mean the model itself, but the subject, I should say. It's just I don't know, the colors, and it's just a fun, looks like a fun model to you know, to do as a little photogrammetry project. So I'm gonna try not to be biased, but you know, I think it's kind of fun. So, but let's talk about this particular model, and, you know, just take into consideration the subject difficulty. Let's start from there. Overall, you know, the main part of the vehicle is not too difficult, right? We get all the way around here, this part here, but there are some challenging things, like, for example, this cigar here, right? Being able to isolate this, because it's kind of like free floating in the air, the arms, you know, the parts that are in between the two models, like that, like you need some good photos there to clean that up, or you need the right position. So, you know, in terms of difficulty, it's a medium difficulty object, not too simple and not too difficult. Like, for example, this little antenna thing, right? Being able to reconstruct that properly, because it's very thin, it can often disappear, or you get these gaps in between. So here it just kind of reconstructed. So there are some things here that can be a little bit challenging. Now, in terms of the photographs, let's start with the quantity of photographs and sort of the layout here. So let me bring those back. All right. So you'll notice that when I rotate around, the quantity of photographs is okay, but it's lacking. Okay, it's a little shy. Let's put it that way. There could have been a few more photographs that would have improved this model significantly. And it's quite evident where we're lacking some photos. So sometimes you can just look at the model and say, yeah, okay, so this area was missing something or whatever. And in the coverage section, if you look at this, there's a bunch that were taken at the top. Over here you get some that were taken on this side, and of course when you come on this side here, right, we're not getting a lot. And look at the wheels and look at the side of the vehicle, right? We've got cameras which are high up on an oblique angle, but on this side here where we have lower camera positions, well, look at the tires and such, right? They're reconstructed much better. So this is where we run into some problems with the camera position and the coverage. So that could have been definitely improved. Now, in terms of the actual photographs themselves, you know, if you look down here and I click on one of them or whatever, it's not too bad. We do have some dark shadows under here, but that's not all too detrimental. So I think we can improve the or we can live with the shadows here. We can improve them with a little bit of lighting or some different things, but if you look at the exterior of the vehicle and the way it's lit, it's actually not too bad. I think it's fairly reasonable. It's something that can recover the model textures, and you can see here even from the colors, it's really not too bad. And the images were quite crisp. They're pretty good. Again, a little bit more lighting or a little bit more maybe some bounced light or something might be able to help that from the lighting standpoint, but otherwise it's okay. And again, the only other comment I would say here is just the organization of the photos. It would seem to me this was taken by hand, which is okay. I would just have pasted out a little bit more organized, in a more organized fashion, but otherwise, you know, you're just missing some photos, and you can tell when we talk about the mesh quality. So let me just look at the mesh here for a second. So you can see we're lacking a lot of detail on this side, where we have better photos, a little bit better detail underneath here. So this is what happens when, you know, we don't shoot low and we start picking up part of the ground and such like that. Look, if you look at the front bumper, you know, it's trying to connect to the ground. And so some shots lower to the ground here would have helped this, like shots like this on this side, right? We would have seen through the gap here and provided a little bit more space. You can see back here, totally missing a bunch of data. And so, you know, this model could have been better done, better photographed. Up here, right, this part's not too bad, but of course this is always where we get photos. So you can see we got a nice, just these 3 photos up here. This one here, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, those guys are what helped reconstruct part of this thing here, okay, the face and that. But the texture quality, if we go back to this, okay, it's okay. It's not bad. Could have been a little bit better. Overall, I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one a 5. Okay, there was a lot of opportunity here to make this much, much better. And I tell you, I love the model, like in terms of the subject. It's just so fun, and yeah, just something that just looks really, really cool. But unfortunately, missing some photos. Could have been much improved. So the person who did this one, if you watch this and you want to improve this, all you have to do is just take some more photos, take them in a very organized fashion, and I think your model will be much, much improved. And it's a very cool model to do, so I recommend you go back and try it out. All right, let's do another model here. All right, so here we are. This is a model of Groot, or baby Groot, I guess. And let's get right into it, because the subject difficulty on this one is a little bit greater. And the reason I say that is because of this stuff up here, okay? We have these little branches and stuff that's growing off his head. And this stuff, if it's not photographed properly, it will not reconstruct well. So subject difficulty, this is about an 8 because of this stuff up here. Okay, 7.5, 8 I think is reasonable for the subject difficulty. And down here, not too bad, you know, some things with the armpits and stuff like that, but otherwise it's you know, the difficulty comes in these little thin parts that are up here, little thin branches. Now, in terms of the photographs, let's turn those on. So I'm gonna take a look out here from farther away. So right off the bat, I mean, what can you tell? I mean, you can see that the photos here are very well organized, right? We have a nice ring, we've got another ring here, and we have them at different levels, right? So we got a high one, we got a medium one, and we've got a low one. So in terms of the quantity of photographs, we definitely have enough, right? No problem there. In terms of the coverage, again, really well done, right? We've got a lot of stuff going on here. There are some gaps, little gaps in between here, but it's not detrimental to the model. I don't think it seems to be enough. And even some of these here, like we have 2, I'm not sure if the person was just, you know, forgot to move around, or they just kept it real close. But obviously there could have been a little bit better spacing on some of these, and then you can become more efficient. But I like what they did here at the top, right? So they knew something was going on here. They had these branches, and they took a number of photos up top here, right? Got the quantity and the coverage really, really well where it counts over here, and sure enough, you know, they were able to reconstruct this. Now, when I just look at the images here, the lighting is quite nice. Nothing harsh. Again, this is a small model. It's within their control. So if you have an area that's well lit with ambient lighting, then there shouldn't be any particular problems here. So no problem with the lighting, and I've already talked about the organization, so well done there. Let me shut off the cameras and let's have a look at the model itself, just the mesh. So this is looking nice. Okay, so if you look at this model, look at the shape, the geometries and such, it's looking really nice. Okay, so I really like what's happening here. Again, the parts that are underneath, very difficult to catch, right? So you really have to get low. So if you wanted to make this a 3D print, right now there's some repairs that you're gonna have to do down here by filling in some holes, or what you could have done was just flip this upside down or something like that, use a turntable, and you would be able to capture all of this even just putting it on its back, let's say, resting it on its back, and then photographing it like from this angle here in a ring kind of thing, that would help. So, the coverage again would be important, but because this is a standing model, and normally, if you were to fix or repair some of these areas, it wouldn't be a problem when you put this together. But really nice detail. Like, I like the detail on the arms, got some good detail on the back, and the head is just fantastic, like really, really well done. So I kind of like that. And of course the texture, well, we've seen that already. Nice and even. You're not getting hot spots, you're not getting funky blending or whatever. So I kind of like this. It looks pretty good. And if I were to score this one on a scale of 1 to 10, I think this one with a little bit of cleanup too would easily get, like an 8.5, 8.5 out of 10. So that's pretty good. I like this one. Let's move on to the next one. And we're back with dolphins this time. So that's going to be the subject here. So let's talk about the difficulty of this particular subject. Well, to start off with, overall, it's not too bad. There are some little details here, like in back of the fin and going on around this side, not too bad. This is all, stuff that you can easily get to just by photographing around, but it's usually the stuff that's underneath that can cause a problem. But you can see here, not too bad. So there are some things that cause a little bit of difficulty, but maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, something like this would be, I'd say, like a 6.5 maybe. So it's not that bad. Okay, so subject difficulty is sort of low to medium, let's say. Let's talk about the photographs now, and let's talk about the quantity. Let me turn on the camera positions here and have a look. So it appears we have a decent amount of photographs. I think the quantity in terms of the number of photographs, I think it's decent. There's some close-ups that were taken. There's some rings here moving around the model. And in terms of the coverage, it's fairly well covered, right? We've got, it's hard to distinguish, but maybe like one here, another level here, and then we've got another level or row that's a little bit further down. So that's pretty good. That's not too bad, and I think it's fairly well covered. In terms of the photographs, you can see here, we do have some shadows here, so I'm not sure where this was taken. It looks like it's outdoors possibly, but these shadows are going to cause some harshness. So again, if it's not in your control, then you have to kind of deal with it either by taking your photographs or lightening them up, or sometimes just using reflectors, or even adding fill from the flash. That is possible for sure. Okay, so but this is not too bad, right? But we do have some bright spots and some darker spots, but in terms of lighting, it's not too bad, right? It's enough here that we can make out what we need. But again, sometimes we get these dark shaded areas that we don't want. We want something that's more uniform so that we can light it in another 3D package. So not too bad. In terms of the organization of photos, I'm going to guess, well, it looks like this was taken by hand because we're getting a lot of overlapping shots. You can see that there's kind of some that are pointing upwards, or some that are kind of pointing sort of straight on, some that are pointing a little bit downwards. So there's kind of a mix here of things, and this could have been optimized a little bit, I think. So for example, up here, a nice ring that's pointed down. Over here, another ring that's slightly down. Another one in the middle that's sort of head on, let's say, and then the one at the bottom I think would have been either positioned slightly upward, so the camera was pointing a little bit upward to get some of those areas that are underneath, especially like underneath here. And there are some camera positions like this one here. That one's pretty good. You can see just a nice angle right there. Now let's look at the quality of the mesh, because with the texture on, it looks pretty good, but let's see what we got when we turn off the camera positions and then just start looking at the mesh. Okay, so where you get these, this is supposed to be like water, or these striations, or whatever you want to call them, pretty good. I mean, they look decent. And if I move into the model, some different areas, yeah, we get some pretty good stuff happening there. But Okay, I'm just looking at the model right here. So we can see that we have a little bit of, I don't know if we call it some artifacting or some missing portions here. So whenever that happens, and there's a part of the model that, you know, kind of becomes warped or distorted, that can often be improved by taking some additional photographs. So let's look at the camera positions here and see what we've got. Okay, so you'll see that as we look at this particular area, there's not a lot of photographs. It's almost like there's a gap up here, and a few more photos, 2 or 3 photos taken closer to this particular area, no problem at all. Because if you look on this side, right, you'll see that there's some camera positions here that are closer, and you see here, there's some good overlap there, and then there's kind of like a bigger section here, bigger spacing between this camera, oops, I didn't mean to do that, and this camera over here. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. Now the texturing, it's quite good considering the lighting conditions, but of course lighting is going to help you with the textures, but overall I thought it was you know, fairly well done considering the conditions that the person was working in. So on this one here, I think I'm going to give this model about maybe a 6.5, a 7. Oh, maybe a 7. I think a 7, because overall, if you just looked at this and you did an animation, it would look quite nice. So I don't know, maybe I'm being tough today. I don't know if people are thinking I'm going to be I'm a tough critic with these models, but sometimes just little things can help to improve. But I thought the model overall was quite nice. So yeah, I'll give it like a 7, let's say. So that's good on this one. Let's do one more and let's see what we've got here. Okay, so I think this is the last one that I'm going to be doing here. This particular one is a basket of puppies, and if you look at this model here and we look at the subject difficulty, yeah, there is some difficulty here. You can see in between the models and under here, right? Making sure that you get proper separation is going to require some thinking about how you take the photographs. So, you know, the outer part of the basket is not too bad. I think that's not really all that difficult. But I would say this is a 7, you know, 6.5 for sure. Well, no, 7. I think this is a 7 because of all the stuff that's in here. So if you don't take that these little areas here into consideration and some of the undercuts, then or the undersides, that's going to give you some problems. So let's say this is a 7 in terms of the subject difficulty, and let's turn on the cameras and see what we got in terms of camera positions. Let me zoom out here. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see that there's a fairly well-structured set of images taken here. But in terms of the quantity of photographs, I would say, yeah, there's definitely enough photographs here that have been taken. So I'm pretty happy with the quantity. The coverage looks pretty good. It's not too bad. I can see that we do have some gaps here, so I'm not sure what happened. But I think, you know, if these were attempted here to be filled in or whatever, that could have been a little bit more improved. I can see the person was taking photographs on a little table here or a bench or whatever, so they're probably able to get all the way around the model, so that's okay. And you know, the photographs in terms of their clarity, they look pretty good. I think the photos are fairly well taken. It almost looks a little dark in some places, but it seems to have reconstructed fairly well. The lighting in this particular environment is a little well, it's fairly even. It looks like, you know, room lighting, you know, fairly well lit overall, and certainly, you know, it appears like it's fine on the model here. There's enough model, a little bit of shadows and such, but not too bad. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, in terms of the organization of the photos, you can see that there's fairly well, there was some thought put into this if you look at it from the top down. So when you get these nice even rings, that's a good sign that somebody was taking some care. Now there are some photos that are missing here, and I don't know if there was a problem, they didn't reconstruct, or they just didn't bother with them because they, you know, they wanted to get detail in one area versus another. You can see that, you know, there's some that are pointed way down, so there's a little series there. There's a series up top, there's a series a little bit lower, and then one down to the ground. So you know, the organization is quite good. There was an attempt made here to keep these positions organized, and I think that really helped the model. So let's turn off the cameras and let's look at the mesh model. So let's say, for example, we wanted to 3D print this. What would it look like, or how would it, you know, print out? And actually, this is really nice. So I'm looking at this and look at all the little areas in here. That looks quite nice. Let's look underneath here. Yeah, you see, even under here, there's some little artifacts here, not a lot, but it's quite nice. The basket, some good detail on that basket. So I'm quite happy with that too. Now, did they do the bottom? No. So you can see we have a big hole here at the bottom. It's not necessary for this. We can cap this off if you were to put this into a 3D program, or you can just fill this big hole that's there, no problem. But you know what? I like the mesh. It's not too bad at all. There's some nice detail here. I would even, you know, look at all the little spaces in between here, right? Fairly well done. So I would give this one an 8.5 on the attempt there for the mesh. So that's looking pretty good. Now, let's go to the texture. The texture is not too bad. If we look at the model and you look at the pictures and stuff, so, you know, there's a little bit of discoloration and things like that. It is what it is. And, but I like the way it's been reconstructed. Some of these shadowed areas just are going to be very difficult anyway, no matter what lighting you have. So, you know, the texture looks quite good. This would be a nice animation, a nice model. And in fact, this one was included in one of the sample video file that I had for the student projects. So I'm quite happy with that. And I think it looks quite good. So I think I'm going to leave it with this one as the last one for the student projects and the model review. And I just want to say thanks a lot to everybody, and I wish you all the best, and we'll see you on the next Click3D. Take care.